It was supposed to be just another peaceful weekend at our family's lake cabin, one of those trips where you disconnect, grill some burgers, and let the kids run barefoot on the dock. My niece Maya had just come up for a few days to relax. After her college finals, she's quiet, respectful, and the kind of girl who always says please and thank you. But apparently, that wasn't enough for one HOA board member who decided that Maya didn't look like she belonged. We've owned that cabin for over 2 decades. It's been in the family through every holiday, birthday, and summer memory. But the moment Maya stepped onto the property alone, this woman, who we now know as Karen, president of the local HOA, decided she needed to call the cops. No questions asked. No conversation. Just assumptions and accusations. What followed was a ridiculous confrontation that had everyone stunned. Karen was out there, arms crossed, acting like she owned the entire lake. She told the cops Maya was trespassing, claimed she had never seen her around, and said something about community rules. Meanwhile, Maya stayed calm. Because what Karen didn't know was that Maya had something with her that would flip the entire situation on its head. As the officers asked Maya for ID, she didn't reach into her wallet. She calmly stepped back inside the cabin and returned with a manila envelope. She handed it over silently. Inside, the original deed, with our family name printed clear as day. You could see Karen's expression change the moment she laid eyes on it, like she realized she had just made a huge mistake. But that's not even the wildest part. Because what happened next exposed way more than just her ignorance. AT opened the door to a whole deeper issue that none of us were ready for. The officers looked at the deed, then at each other, then at Karen. You could tell they were trying to keep things professional, but even they seemed a little thrown off. Karen, on the other hand, didn't say a word. She just stood there, jaw tight, eyes flicking back and forth like she was searching for an excuse that wouldn't come. Maya didn't gloat, didn't raise her voice, just stood there in a hoodie and sandals, waiting for someone to apologize. But none came. What made it even more unsettling was that this wasn't the first weird encounter we'd had with the HOA last summer. Someone left anonymous notes on our cabin door about violating noise rules, even though we hadn't even turned on music. A week later, we got a notice claiming our dock paint color was out of code. It felt targeted, but we brushed it off. Now, after this incident with Maya, it was starting to feel like something bigger was going on. Karen claimed she didn't recognize Maya and thought she was squatting. But our family name is literally on the mailbox. The cabin sits well within our property lines, and we pay the HOA fees like clockwork. So what really was this about? Why did she jump to calling the police without checking the facts first? And more importantly, what was she really trying to achieve? Later that evening, I found out something that shifted everything. A neighbor, someone who's lived there for years, quietly pulled me aside. They said Karen's been on a quiet mission to push out non-Fultimers, especially ones who don't attend HOA meetings or agree with her so-called community vision. Suddenly, the cold stares, the weird rule changes, the increased patrols, they all started to make sense. But the truth behind it all, that was still hidden. And what we'd soon discover would make that lake weekend unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. The next morning, things felt off. Even the lake seemed quieter than usual, like it knew something was brewing beneath the surface. Maya kept busy helping around the cabin, trying not to let the incident get to her, but I could see it in her eyes. She was shaken. Not because of Karen, but because of what it revealed. For the first time, she felt like a stranger, in a place that was supposed to be her second home. Later that day, we walked into the small community store up the road. The guy behind the counter, Dale, gave us a polite nod. But his smile faded when he saw Maya. That's when it hit me word had spread, and probably not in our favor. Karen must have been talking. Sure enough, as we walked through the aisles, we overheard someone whisper, "That's the girl from the cabin. The one the HOA had to call the cops on." They said it like it was fact, like Maya had done something wrong. Back at the cabin, I pulled out our HOA newsletters and started flipping through them. Buried deep in the latest issue was a short paragraph about a proposed resident verification initiative. It was framed as a way to protect community values and ensure property integrity. But reading between the lines, it felt like something else entirely. It felt like Karen was laying the groundwork for picking and choosing who gets to feel welcome. Meanwhile, Maya's older brother, Jordan, showed up unexpectedly. He had driven 3 hours when he heard what happened. He wasn't one to let things slide, especially when it involved family. He started asking the hard questions. Why wasn't the board held accountable? Who else had been targeted? And why were so many neighbors suddenly acting distant? As the sun set over the lake that evening, a quiet tension settled over the cabin. We weren't just dealing with a nosy HOA president anymore. This was something deeper, more personal, and whatever was really going on, we were about to find out. Tensions at the lake cabin grew heavier with each passing hour. Karen's silence after the deed incident only made her presence more ominous. Rumors had begun swirling, and the community was starting to take sides, some whispering that Maya and our family didn't really belong. Others quietly supporting us, but too afraid to speak out. It felt like we were trapped in a quiet storm, where every glance from a neighbor could carry suspicion or resentment. One afternoon, as Maya and Jordan sat on the porch, an unexpected visitor appeared, a man none of us recognized, but who seemed oddly familiar with the HOA's inner workings. He introduced himself as a former board member who had stepped down amid controversy. His tone was cautious, but the message he delivered was clear. Karen had been pushing a secret agenda, something about tightening control over property rights and streamlining who was allowed to use the cabins. It sounded like a power grab disguised as community care, but what was worse was the suggestion that Karen might be hiding something deeper, something that could shake the whole neighborhood if it came to light. That evening, just as the sun dipped below the trees, Karen showed up unannounced at the cabin. Her usual smug confidence had been replaced with something colder, more calculated. She stood on the porch steps, eyes locked on Maya, and said in a low voice that sent chills down our spines, "You think a piece of paper changes everything, but you haven't seen the whole picture." The air felt electric, every word thick with unspoken threats. Maya's face remained steady, but I could feel the weight of what was coming. The quiet lake we had always loved was no longer a safe place, was a battleground. We were on the edge of something far bigger than a simple HOA dispute and whatever Karen was planning next. It was clear it wasn't going to end quietly, just when we thought things couldn't get more complicated. The next day brought a shocking twist that changed everything. As we were trying to process Karen's ominous warning, an email landed in my inbox from the county records office. It was a notice about a recent claim filed against our lake cabin property. The claim, a dispute over the land boundaries, submitted by none other than Karen herself. At first I thought it was a mistake. How could she challenge something that had been settled years ago? But digging deeper, I found that Karen had been quietly pushing to redraw property lines in the neighborhood lines that, if accepted, would cut into our land and put the cabin's ownership in jeopardy. Suddenly, this wasn't just about one tense visit or a misjudged call to the cops. This was a calculated move to edge us out. To rewrite the rules in her favor, we confronted Karen at the next HOA meeting, armed with the deed and the county documents. Her calm facade cracked, and she admitted that she wanted to reclaim the community's original spirit, but refused to explain why that meant targeting our family. Other neighbors started to murmur, and some voiced support for Karen, which only made the tension thicker. The community we'd thought was our safe haven was splitting apart. Meanwhile, Maya received strange messages on social media, anonymous threats warning her to stay away. It was clear that this conflict was spreading beyond the lake cabin, touching parts of our lives we hadn't expected. The stakes were higher than ever. We weren't just fighting for a property anymore. We were fighting for respect, for truth, and for the right to belong. And as the sun set over the lake once again, we realized one thing for sure. This fight was far from over. Karen had started something that none of us could walk away from. Isley, and the biggest surprises were still waiting just beneath the surface. The tension reached a breaking point at the next HOA meeting. The room was packed, neighbors on both sides, the air thick with anticipation and frustration. We laid everything out: the deed, the county claim, the threats Maya had received. For the first time, the cracks in Karen's carefully constructed story began to show. Under pressure, she stumbled, revealing that the boundary dispute wasn't just about property lines, was tied to a plan to sell part of the communal lakefront. To developers, the news hit everyone like a shockwave. Suddenly, Karen's protecting community values talk sounded like a cover-up for greed. Many neighbors who had been quietly supporting her started shifting, questioning their loyalty. We saw an opening to unite the community, to fight back against the secretive moves threatening the place we all loved. Just when it seemed like we were gaining ground, the unexpected happened. Karen dropped a bombshell. She produced an old, unsigned agreement between some early homeowners, ours excluded, that supposedly gave the HOA board the right to enforce new rules on property use, even if it meant overriding deeds. The room went silent. This was something none of us had seen before. Something that blurred the line between legal and unjust. But Maya, always calm and sharp, stepped forward. She'd brought a local real estate attorney with her, someone who specialized in HOA disputes. The attorney quickly pointed out that the document was outdated, legally questionable, and didn't override official county property records. Karen's move was clever, but ultimately empty. With the community watching, the board was forced to drop the land claim and stop the harassment. The developer plans were exposed and put on hold. And for the first time in a long while, the lake felt like ours again. Yet, as we packed up that night, Maya found a folder hidden behind one of the old cabenza folder filled with letters and photos hinting at something even bigger than land disputes. Something about Karen's past. And the real reason she'd been so desperate to take control. The fight was far from over. Finding that folder felt like uncovering the final piece of a complicated puzzle. Inside were old letters and photos revealing Karen's history with the neighborhood, details that explained her obsession with control and why she targeted families like ours. It turned out she wasn't just protecting property lines or community values. She was trying to rewrite her own version of the neighborhood story. One where only a select few had a voice. With this new information, we brought transparency to the community. We shared what we found with neighbors, showing them the real motivation behind the harassment and the false claims. Slowly, the division began to heal. People realized the importance of standing together, protecting not just land, but the sense of belonging that made the lake cabin a home for so many families. Maya, Jordan, and I felt a deep relief. The battle had tested us, but it also brought us closer, not just as family, but as part of a community that refused to be torn apart by fear and suspicion. We learned that ownership isn't just about deeds or property lines. It's about respect, trust, and the memories we create together. In the end, Karen stepped down from the HOA board, and the community voted in new leadership focused on inclusion and fairness. The lake cabin returned to its peaceful rhythm, the kind that invites laughter, storytelling, and quiet sunsets. This experience taught us how important it is to stand up when things feel unfair, to seek the truth, and to fight for what's right without losing kindness along the way. For anyone facing their own HOA conflicts or neighborhood drama, remember, sometimes the toughest battles reveal the strongest bonds. Our lake cabin is more than land. It's a place where family and community come first. And that's something no dispute can ever take away.